At 02:13 hours local time, two American UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters are screaming toward Pokrovsk in Ukraine, hugging the terrain at just 150 feet off the ground, carrying a special ops team that doesn't exist. 11 Ukrainian operators from GUR military intelligence sit silently, their faces painted black, knowing they're about to attempt something that will either save 1,250 Ukrainian civilians and preserve one of the most important supply lines for Ukraine's forces, or get their whole squad eliminated. In this war, there have been fewer missions of greater consequence than this. Pokrovsk, the most vital supply line for Ukraine's eastern defenses, is down to a 6-mile transport corridor that's shrinking by the week. Intelligence reports show Russian artillery can now hit 80% of the remaining supply route. Medical evacuations have become suicide missions. Food convoys are taking 60% casualties. The city's 1,250 remaining civilians, down from 60,000 in 2022, are in real danger of starvation setting in. The city has been a crown jewel target of Russian forces for over a year, and they've positioned themselves in a near-perfect pincer-style encirclement, with thousands of troops massed in Donetsk Oblast, all laser-focused on completing this stranglehold. Signaling how important control of the city is, Ukraine's intelligence chief and lead spy, General Kirilo Budanov, is personally commanding this operation from a forward position just 12 kilometers away, watching every second unfold on encrypted video feeds, the country's eastern front hanging in the balance. What the Ukrainians don't know is that this critical mission is about to trigger one of the largest Russian air defense responses in the Donetsk sector since the war began. But by sunrise, Russian forces will discover that everything they think they've intercepted about this secret helicopter raid has been dead wrong. At 02:19 hours, the first threat emerges. The lead Ukrainian pilot's AN/APR-39 radar warning receiver detects S-300 search radar emissions from the northeast. The distinctive frequency signature means a Russian 48N6 missile battery is scanning their approach vector with 400 kilowatt pulses. Just 23 kilometers from its target, the S-300 can engage helicopters out to 40 kilometers, giving the Russians a massive engagement envelope. The Black Hawks, already skirting the terrain, drop down even lower, now skimming just 30 meters above the ground to stay below the radar horizon. But that creates a new problem. As altitude drops, options shrink, danger multiplies. Power lines are death, and every tree line could hide Manpads fighters with Igla missiles. The pilots are trading one threat for another, gambling that terrain masking will keep them safe from missile engagement zones, all while trying to not get taken out by the terrain itself. The UH-60 Black Hawk you see here represents America's most versatile battlefield helicopter, but these aren't standard aircraft. Ukrainian technicians have spent months modifying them with Israeli-supplied EL/L-8222 electronic warfare pods and enhanced armor packages rated against 23mm cannon fire. Each chopper carries an AN/ALQ-144 infrared jammer that can defeat heat-seeking missiles out to 5 kilometers, plus M206 chaff and MJU-7 flare dispensers that can create defensive clouds spanning over 100 meters. But the real protection, that comes from something the Russians can't see. Ukrainian signals intelligence has been monitoring Russian communications for weeks, using American-supplied AN/PRD-13 direction-finding equipment to map every radar site, every SAM battery, every patrol route. This mission window only exists because Ukraine discovered a 47-minute gap in Russian air defense coverage that occurs during shift changes at 0200 hours. But suddenly, at 0221, that window started closing early. A Russian early warning radar had picked up a faint return on the distinctive acoustic signature of the Black Hawk's rotor blades. Their system's seismic sensors can identify helicopter types by their blade pass frequency, and UH-60s create a unique 17 Hz signature that's unmistakable. The Russian radar immediately transmitted coordinates to 3 separate air defense units. A Panzer S-1 system began slewing its radar toward the intercept vector. 2 Tor M2 batteries powered up their 9S-32 engagement radars. Most dangerous of all, a roving SA-11 bug system with 9 M317 STA missiles received targeting data and began calculating firing solutions. The Spec Ops mission was flying into a coordinated air defense trap, but they don't know it yet. Every second brought them deeper into overlapping engagement zones, designed to ensure no aircraft could escape. At 0224 hours, the formation reached the drop point, a field just 800 meters from the main supply road that was chosen because satellite imagery shows it's in a radar shadow created by a small hill. But the Ukrainians have made a critical miscalculation about Russian surveillance capabilities. Planners mapped for radar, charted probable patrols, but didn't know there were still eyes in the dark. A Russian Orlan-10 reconnaissance drone had been loitering at 3,000 meters for the past 2 hours. This isn't just any drone. It's equipped with an advanced electro-optical turret that can track targets in complete darkness using thermal imaging. And the drone's 6-kilogram payload includes intelligence equipment that's been monitoring Ukrainian radio frequencies. The Blackhawks flared, bleeding airspeed as they approached the landing zone. The twin General Electric T-700GE 701C engines, straining in the trade-off of forward velocity for vertical control. 11 GUR operators fast-roped from the Blackhawks in under 20 seconds. These aren't regular infantry. They're Ukraine's most elite special operations unit, trained at facilities that aren't on the map. But here's what makes this operation different from every other helicopter insertion in the war. The GUR team isn't planning to extract within the typical 90-minute window. They're planning to disappear completely, using conventional mission patterns as cover for a much deeper assignment that could change the entire battle for Pokrovsk. The Blackhawks lift off immediately, their mission only half complete, at least according to expectations of Russian observers. While Russian forces focus on the obvious helicopter threat, the GUR team is implementing Operation Lifeline, a plan to establish long-term observation posts along the supply corridor and coordinate precision strikes against Russian artillery positions. The operators are carrying Switchblade 600 loitering munitions, 23-kilogram weapons that can destroy tanks at ranges up to 40 kilometers. More importantly, they're equipped with laser designators to mark targets, feeding precise coordinates for American-supplied HIMARS rockets to strike with pinpoint accuracy. The plan is audacious in its simplicity. Instead of trying to hold territory, the GUR team will create a network of hidden positions that can call in precision strikes on any Russian unit that threatens the supply corridor. They have enough supplies cached in the area to operate independently for weeks, but the Russians are about to spring their own trap, one that will test every piece of technology and training the Ukrainian operators possess. At 02:27 hours, Russian artillery began falling on the insertion point, but not randomly. 152mm shells from a 2S-19 Mest-AS self-propelled howitzer are being guided by the Orlan-10 drone overhead, each round landing within 50 meters of the previous impact. The Russians are walking their fire across the field in a systematic pattern designed to eliminate any survivors. The GUR team leader faces an impossible choice. Standard operating procedure calls for immediate extraction when under direct fire of this type, but calling for the Blackhawks now would expose the helicopters to the full Russian air defense network that's just activated. Worse, it would compromise the real mission before it even began. Ukraine's analysis from the forward position confirmed that the facts of the situation are unforgiving. Russian forces were converging on the drop-off from 3 directions. The 39th and 136th Guards motor rifle brigades were moving mechanized infantry from the north and pushing reconnaissance units from the east. But most dangerous of all, Spetsnaz operators from the 45th Guards Special Purpose Regiment are approaching from the south, professionals who know exactly how to hunt other special forces. Every second of delay means the encirclement tightens. Every minute of hesitation gives Russian thermal imaging more time to locate their positions. The team leader makes a decision that will either save the city or doom his men. At 02:29, he transmits a single code word, Phantom. It means the decoy extraction is still on. The helicopters will return as planned, but the GUR team won't be there. They're going deeper into Russian-controlled territory, not out of it. That call means there is no turning back. Now it's either win or don't come home. No cavalry coming to save them if things go wrong. They're committing to a mission with no way out except success. The Russian artillery shifts fire, now targeting the expected planned extraction zone. They're trying to deny the Ukrainians any escape route, not knowing they're playing directly into Ukrainian hands. At 02:45, while Russian forces focus on the obvious pickup point, the GUR team is already 2 kilometers away, moving through drainage ditches and abandoned farm buildings toward their actual objectives. They've used the artillery barrage as cover, letting the explosions mask their movement signatures from thermal sensors. The lead operator reaches Observation Post Alpha at 02:51 hours, an abandoned grain silo that provides perfect overwatch of the main supply route. From here, they can see Russian artillery positions that have been interdicting Ukrainian convoys for weeks. The 2 S-19 Mest-AS howitzers are dug in behind earthen berms, thinking they're safe from counter-battery fire. They're wrong. The GUR operator activates his AN/PEQ-1 laser designator, painting the lead Russian howitzer with invisible infrared energy. The coordinates automatically transmit to a HIMARS battery 45 kilometers away via encrypted satellite link. Time to impact: 4 minutes, 30 seconds. But the Russians aren't sitting idle. At 02:54 hours, a 4-post reconnaissance drone detects unusual thermal signatures near the grain silo. The drone's operator zooms in, seeing what appears to be military equipment that shouldn't be there. He immediately alerts ground forces. At the same time, a second GUR operator is facing down their own crisis. Moving toward Observation Post Bravo, they encounter a Russian patrol that wasn't supposed to be there. 6 soldiers from a reconnaissance unit conducting a sweep. The Ukrainians have two choices: eliminate the patrol and risk alerting every Russian unit in the area, or try to evade and potentially compromise the mission's timing. The team leader makes the call. At 02:56 hours, suppressed gunfire erupts. 6 Russian soldiers were invited to no longer fight in this war without ever knowing what hit them, but their radio check would be due in minutes. When they don't respond, every Russian unit in the sector will know something's wrong. The clock is now ticking faster than ever. The GUR team has just minutes to establish their observation posts and begin calling in strikes before Russian forces realize they're dealing with something much more dangerous than a failed helicopter insertion. In the meantime, the HIMARS rockets had launched towards the first painted position. 6 M31A1 guided rockets were streaking through the night sky, each carrying a 200-pound high-explosive warhead programmed to detonate exactly 3 meters above the Russian artillery positions. But the Russians had one more surprise. A Krasuka 4 electronic warfare system that's been silent until now suddenly activated, flooding the area with jamming signals across multiple frequency bands. The system can disrupt GPS guidance and satellite communications, effectively breaking the munitions link with the laser designators the GUR team is using. The Ukrainian operators watch their GPS displays go blank. Their satellite radios fill with static. Most critically, GPS was jammed just as the HIMARS rockets entered their terminal guidance phase. The rockets hit, but an empty field's uselessly detonating 200 meters away. The electronic warfare jamming has degraded their accuracy just enough to turn precision weapons into expensive fireworks. The Russian artillery immediately begins counter-battery fire, trying to locate the source of the rocket attack. 152mm shells start falling in a pattern designed to destroy any Ukrainian spotters in the area. The GUR team is now under direct fire from the very positions they were trying to eliminate, but they're not giving up. At 03:03 hours, the team leader pushes through to Phase 2, something the Russians never saw coming. The extraction helicopters return on schedule, racing toward the original insertion point while Russian air defenses track their approach. The Pantsir S-1 achieves radar lock at 18 kilometers range. It's 1RS-21E radar painting the Blackhawks with targeting quality energy. The lead Blackhawk pilot activates his AN/ALQ-144 jammer and begins evasive maneuvers, but the Pantsir launches 257 E-6 missiles anyway. The missiles accelerate to Mach 3. They're 20-kilogram warheads designed to destroy aircraft with proximity fusing at 5 meters. Chaff and flares bloom behind the Blackhawks as they execute defensive turns. The infrared jammers create false heat signatures, confusing the missile's seekers. One missile detonates harmlessly 200 meters away, its proximity fuse triggered by chaff. But the second achieves near-miss detonation. The whole thing is deadly theater. The helicopters land at the original insertion point, crews scanning for operators who aren't there. Under heavy fire from Russian positions, the door gunners provide covering fire with M240 machine guns while the pilots maintain the illusion of a desperate rescue attempt. After 90 seconds of simulated extraction under fire, the Blackhawks lift off with no passengers. To Russian observers, it appears the helicopter raid has failed spectacularly. The Special Forces team either killed or scattered, the mission a total loss. But 3 kilometers away, while Russian forces determine next steps after their apparent victory, the GUR team is finalizing the network of observation posts. They've used the extraction as the perfect diversion, drawing every Russian unit away from their actual positions, giving them enough time to coordinate a follow-up attack before navigating as a unit back to the actual extraction point. At 03:12, the second wave of HIMARS strikes begins. But this time, the operators had switched to a backup inertial guidance mode, which the Krasuka 4 can't jam. The Russian electronic warfare system was designed to counter comm channels via radio and GPS, but accelerometers and gyroscopes still work. The Russian artillery positions disappear in sequential explosions. Each HIMARS rocket delivers its 200-pound warhead with surgical precision, turning million-dollar howitzers into twisted metal. Secondary explosions from ammunition storage create a chain reaction that lights up the night sky. Within minutes, the Russian artillery threat to the Pokrovsk supply corridor has been deterred. For now. While Russian propaganda attempted to claim they had eliminated the Spec Ops unit completely, even circulating doctored video. Ongoing intelligence efforts confirmed that with Russian artillery neutralized, Ukrainian supply convoys began moving freely along the corridor for the first time in weeks. Medical evacuations resume. Food and ammunition reach Pokrovsk's defenders. The city that seemed doomed to fall at any time suddenly has a lifeline. But the real victory isn't just tactical, it's psychological. Russian forces now know that Ukrainian special operations can penetrate their rear areas at will, calling in precision strikes on targets they thought were safe. Every artillery position, every command post, every supply depot is now potentially vulnerable. With the GUR team's network of observation posts providing real-time intelligence on Russian movements, they've transformed a rescue mission into a long-term intelligence asset, one that's already paying dividends across the Eastern Front. The 11 operators who disappeared into the night around Pokrovsk proved that in modern warfare, the most effective weapons aren't always the most expensive ones. Sometimes, the right people in the right place at the right time can change everything. Stay prepared, stay informed, subscribe for more.